Welcome back. Just one work in the second half, Beethoven's penultimate violin sonata, the ninth, with its famous subtitle, the Kreutzer Sonata, one of the most spectacularly misleading subtitles of all pieces of music. A subtitle describing a violinist who never played the work and certainly didn't like it. Instead, let's look at the title page again, just as we talked about the title page of the Chevalier de Saint-Georges piece. This one has two elements to it. Bear with me. I'm going to do it in Italian first, not least because then the sensitivity is a bit better. Sonata mulattica, composta per il mulatto Brichtauer. So, a mulatto sonata, meaning kind of that mulatto being essentially old-fashioned word from a white perspective for a black person. So, a kind of black style sonata composed for the black Brichtauer, and in this case that was a violinist called George Brichtauer who gave the premiere with Beethoven of this particular sonata. I'm going to move straight on to the second half of the title page, which says in uno stile molto concertante come d'un concerto. So a sonata for the pianoforte, it still says, by the way, sonata for the pianoforte and violin obbligato, but then it says, written in a very concertato style, like a concerto. So, I mean, you can't really be more emphatic here. The distance, we're talking, Beethoven wrote the Kreutzer Sonata in 1803. So, we're talking 33 years between that and Joseph Bologna's sonata, and it's like the whole sonata as a genre has grown up. It's become a big, strapping, grown man. But we should talk about Brichtauer too, because this is kind of the reason why we've programmed the sonata in this concert called Beyond Black and White. Brichtauer was a violinist who, a bit like the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, had a pushy dad, except that in Brichtauer's case, his dad was also black. He'd married a white woman, and in fact, George Brichtauer was born in a Polish city. But Brichtauer's father, again, the crucial thing here is education, which set him aside from, after all, the vast majority of people of any kind of marginalised genre, marginalised group in the 18th century. That is to say, whether or not the education, particularly sophisticated musical education, was really only going to be extended to the well-to-do, and that was already going to bias men rather than women, and it was definitely going to bias white people rather than black people, or indeed almost any other kind of ethnic grouping. It was very much this music, the kind of music that Beethoven was writing, was understood to be almost exclusively being written by white people for white people to play, which makes it all the more remarkable in some ways that Brichtauer succeeded in that world. But I say that it's remarkable, of course, he was treated as, to a certain degree, a kind of exotic. He was treated as a sort of rather remarkable exception. Reminds me to a degree, I don't know if anyone has seen the famous portrait in the National Gallery of Omai by Sir Joshua Reynolds. There you have this beautiful, fabulous portrait of a young black man. and the exoticism of it, the gentility, the nobility is emphasized, but so very much is his singularity. And we get a very strong feeling from what we know about Bridgetower of his intense singularity, the fact that he stood apart and was celebrated as such. Fortunately, one of the more enlightened as well as rich of Beethoven's patrons, a guy called Prince Lichnowsky, paired Beethoven up with Bridgetower, and of course they met, and Beethoven found that Bridgetower was to a degree a man after his own heart. Beethoven himself liked taking on the world, being singular, striking against convention. That didn't mean, however, that Beethoven was prepared to amend his usual rather chaotic way of working in order to start collaborating with Bridgetower. Bridgetower had to kind of check in with Beethoven shortly before the scheduled premiere, that in fact it was all still going to take place, whereupon I think it was at about, yes, it was at 4:30 in the morning, the day before, that Beethoven had his copyist deliver the manuscript of the final movement to Bridgetower. Okay, here you are, have it. And Bridgetower still ended up reading Bridgetower still ended up reading the Andante, the slow movement, from the original manuscript while he was performing it at the premiere of the concert, because there just hadn't been time enough to copy it. Guess what? Again, with two such singular personalities, though they gave the first performance, they fell out, supposedly over a woman. Well, we've only got Bridgetower's word for that. But you could believe it. And that's why then Beethoven ends up offering this sonata to the French violinist Rodolphe Kreutzer, who declares that it's completely incomprehensible and never plays it. Well, I hope you don't find it incomprehensible. And here to play it are Offerfalk and Reiko Fujisawa. Thank you.